Hill, talk to us about how this whole thing came together and where things are headed, because it has been 3 very chaotic days with hundreds and hundreds of tweets.
That's right, Stephanie. First, on the second question, it looks like the Senate has reached a time agreement to get this done within the next few hours. What's going to happen is they're going to wrap up a series of amendments on an unrelated bill and then immediately vote on this bill that passed the House. It's going to go to President Biden's desk. It may cross the midnight deadline, but it would just be a technical shutdown. As far as this is meaningfully concerned, federal workers won't be furloughed. Air traffic controllers will stay on the job. They will get paid. So that crisis has functionally been averted. Now, how this came together, Speaker Mike Johnson had to go through 4 iterations of his plan. There was Plan A, B, C, and D. Plan D was the one that finally carried the day in the House. And the way he clinched that was by eliminating, as you just noted, President-elect Trump's single most important demand, the most consequential demand, the one he hung his hat on and said, don't you dare, Republicans, pass a bill that keeps the government open without extending the debt limit, or you will be primaried. Well, 170 Republicans listened to that and said, we're going to do it anyway. We're going to defy you because they chose to keep the government open. It's an interesting and an important legislative preview of, I think, the chaos that's set to come over the next 2 years.
So the government won't face a shutdown. I'm going to say that is a win for the American people. But let's talk politics, Melanie, because Donald Trump is out there saying this is a great win, but it didn't include the key thing he's been saying. He wanted the debt ceiling suspension. So how exactly would you characterize this in terms of who won, who lost? Because those who voted no for this were Republicans.
Yeah, that's a great point. I would say Elon Musk was probably the winner because he got what he wanted. He killed that initial bill, which, by the way, had some provisions in there that probably he didn't like from a personal level. Being a businessman, they killed that bill that had something called outbound investments that would have restricted investments to China. He himself and Tesla has investments in China. So, there are some questions raised among Democrats about whether there's a conflict of interest there. But, I would say Mike Johnson is perhaps the biggest loser in all of this. He managed to piss off Donald Trump. He managed to embarrass himself in front of his own Republican conference. And he managed to show to Democrats that he is not a reliable negotiating partner. And not only that, but now he has this debt ceiling debate in this fight. It's going to be a fight hanging over him. I know he did make some commitment that they're going to address this in exchange for $2.5 trillion in cuts. But, I'm making a commitment to eat more vegetables and drink less wine in the new year and work out more. That is just a commitment. Actually implementing it is going to be so much harder. And just seeing what a mess passing a CR, a stopgap funding bill, was this week is just a preview of the circus to come and how difficult it's going to be to achieve things like reconciliation and the debt ceiling and the omnibus and all these legislative priorities that they're talking about on Capitol Hill.
Well, girl, I'm going to help you. If you add fruits and vegetables to that mix next year, wine is made of grapes. Me to you, just here to help. John, can we just talk about this whole thing of conflicts of interest? Because I'm not saying they don't exist, but the last time Donald Trump was president, we raised our hands, we raised red flags all about conflict of interest. But we learned unless it's actually illegal, and in some cases, even if it is, if there are no concrete consequences, they're just going to keep on trucking. So we can sit here and say, oh, my gosh, this is a conflict of interest for Elon Musk. But if there's no rules against any of this stuff, and he's operating as a private citizen in DOJ, which is not an official agency with no official mandate, it's just gross and awful and terrible, but he can do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no one to stop him. The president could stop him. The Congress might be able to stop conflicts of interest. They don't seem very interested in this as he sits next to Donald Trump. I don't know that I would say necessarily making decisions for the Congress. I think both of them, both Musk and Trump, saw where this was headed with the Plan A that Speaker Johnson had. It was in trouble already. They certainly applied the final cuts, stuck a fork in it, and called themselves chefs. But what you can see, the problem that's aligning here going forward, which is Donald Trump's now got a whole bunch of people in the House that have voted against him. They has a whole bunch of people in the Senate that told him to take his attorney general, pick Matt Gaetz, and stuff it. And he now continues to have a debt limit facing him when he comes into the presidency. And what he promised the American people was that he was going to spend a whole bunch more money on things for them, and that he was going to cut taxes. And he's going to run into that debt ceiling pretty soon if he does any of those things. And some of these guys in the House are pretty hardcore about that debt ceiling staying in place because it's the tool they've used to screw their own speakers of the House and to also screw the Democratic Congress. So it should be fun to watch in the new year. The conflicts of interest, that's something that the American voters can weigh in on. They had a chance to do that in November, and they chose Donald Trump as their president, knowing full well some of the conflicts of interest that were surrounding him in the last administration. It was not the thing that was most important to them. I think what most voters care about is their own lives, and they care less about whether or not the president or his friends are benefiting from public policy.
Yeah, and if you talk to the average person out there, they basically think all lawmakers are crooks. They're all criminals. What's the difference? Or at least corrupt. Quick reminder to our audience, though, it's not just lawmakers that are concerned about government spending and running up debt and deficits. The bond market. The bond market is acutely aware of how things are going. And if we proceed to have huge tax cuts and other things that only worsen the situation, it will not be good for markets. Sahil, do you think Mike Johnson's speakership is in danger? I mean, what a week he has just had. And it's not like he has a ton of experience in leadership. Until now, hasn't had a position like this ever since he's been in government.
Yeah, Stephanie, I think the simple margin of the House means Mike Johnson's going to have a tough time getting reelected. That Republican majority, which is already small, is shrinking even further. They will have 220 seats in the new Congress. That's actually going to be 219 because Matt Gaetz is not going to take a seat, which means Mike Johnson can lose one defection, literally one. If he loses a second Republican, then he doesn't have a majority of the House, assuming everyone else is present and all the Democrats aren't voting for him. So his road from here to January 3rd is enormously difficult. And that's just the first thing to have to do, Stephanie. One of the things that Congress did here, yes, it averted a shutdown, but it also created a massive legislative traffic jam in Donald Trump's first year. They have to come right back to the table by March 14th. And Republicans, yes, they technically will control Congress and the White House. They still have to cut a deal with Democrats. There's no way they can get enough votes to do this on their own. And by the way, there's still the 60-vote threshold in the Senate, which Republicans are promising to preserve. There's the debt limit deadline coming up in mid-2025. There's all these cabinet nominees and personnel that they have to confirm through the Senate. And oh, by the way, they want to do a big reconciliation bill, major border security and immigration policy, maybe two, maybe a second one for trillions of dollars in tax breaks. They're going to do all of this next year with these margins. Let's see.
Aye, aye, aye. All right, John, let's talk about Elon Musk, because Democrats, on one hand, are furious about his interference, but at the same time, they are using him to hardcore troll Donald Trump. For the last 2 days, we have heard President Musk all day long. What's your take on this? Donald Trump can't like it.
Yeah, they want to get under his skin. They don't. I mean, they're looking at what's going on. Donald Trump is a billionaire. Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. You know, depending on the estimates, $350, $400 billion. He's able to affect markets, with offhanded comments. And so the Democrats are, to your point, they're trolling Donald Trump. They think that at some point it will get under his skin, that Musk is seen as, if not more powerful than him, at least a rival to him. That has not generally gone well for people in the past. For the moment, it does seem to be going well. Trump and Musk are, playing their buddy act. It's not clear who's driving the motorcycle and who's in the sidecar. But yeah, I mean, I think the Democrats know that they can get under Trump's skin this way, and they want to do that as much as possible, see if they can help sow some division in a Republican Party that felt pretty united on Election Day and now is, what's the term they usually use about Democrats? The Republicans are in disarray. And to Sahil's point with Speaker Johnson and the margins he has, the opening of the next Congress could be, I'm trying to think of a television appropriate term for it, but be a crap show.
Whoa. It's after 11 o'clock. Television appropriate has a lot of leeway at this hour. Here's the thing, Melanie. Donald Trump cannot run again. Elon Musk is not an elected official, answers to absolutely no one. Neither of them are beholden to voters in the way that members of Congress are. Based on what we saw this week, are they all on a collision course after Trump takes office?
Yeah, I think one thing that this episode this week on Capitol Hill really taught us is that there are limits to Donald Trump's influence and power on Capitol Hill. You really saw that with the Matt Gaetz nomination, how that quickly fell apart. And even though Trump has been calling to primary some of these Republicans who voted against one of those bills earlier this week, the thinking on Capitol Hill is that, there's so many of them who voted against it. He can't primary all of them. A lot of these members have high name ID. They have their own sort of brands. It's not possible to primary all of them. And so they're sort of linking hands, daring to defy Trump on a select number of issues. I do think there's going to be clashes, despite all, the ink that is spilled about how this is Trump's party and how Republicans have kowtowed to Donald Trump. I do think they are going to want to stand up to him because, to your point, Trump isn't going to be around for much longer, but they are. They're going to have to be here for much longer in Congress in a lot of cases. And they don't really love the idea of some of the things that Trump is floating about trying to run everything through executive branch and Congress ceding over their own power and no longer having power of the purse strings. I mean, these are really existential questions that they're wrestling with right now. I do think that beyond some of these policy fights we are going to be seeing, there are going to be some massive collision course internally with Republicans, as we saw this week. And I also think, to John's point, there may be some collision course between Musk and Trump as well. I'm curious how long that bromance is really going to last there.